Hi guys, my name is Adam and welcome back to my channel where I make a tabletop role-playing game from scratch on camera. And today we're going back to 2014. Before we start today's episode, I just want to remind you of the 96 likes. Before I started this project of Explorers RPG, I've been using this book to just note down different stuff that is role-playing related. And well, all of this is fun and interesting for world builders, for role players and so on. So 96 likes and I will go through all the 96 pages that I have here. And while you're down there, please press the subscribe button because, well, I want subscribers. Now, back in 2014, I started back up with role-playing games. And I thought that I wanted to start easy, and so I started with Pathfinder because I already had experience with 3.5, and I started with the most basic adventure module that I could find, which was Burnt Offerings. It was very simple, it was easy, and I thought that this was going to be a great beginning since all the players were also completely new to the game itself. So now again, I had everything on my computer right here. I had everything on my computer. I had all of this on my computer. I had the PDF open and I had different bookmarks on it because I needed to look up different things. I also had a separate note that summarized all of the things that were in this book because it was a lot of information to retain while you were running the game. So I had a separate note that would summarize everything that I needed to know about this game. Now again, I also had this here printed out because I of course needed, well, I needed maps and I needed different things about the town, and I of course needed the bestiary because there were multiple different beasts that were supposed to be doing everything on the same time. Now again, since not all beasts were covered in the back of the section or in the middle of the section where the encounter was, some of the beasts were also of course in the bestiary. So therefore I had the bestiary, and I also had multiple different bookmarks in the bestiary because, well, that's what you needed in order to run all the different beasts that you were going to face in combat. Not only that, when you were doing the combat, you also needed the core rulebook. Not because you needed to look up the core rules, but because in here you have all the spells and all the different magic items and so on that you needed in the game. So yeah, you also needed this one. And of course, on top of this, I summarized everything and I put it all in this here. This is my GM binder. I had all the general NPCs, I had handouts, I had settings, I had character sheets, I had absolutely everything that I needed in this here book. So yeah, that was all I needed to run the first couple of sessions whenever I was running the game. Yeah. In contrast to that, when I had my last session, which was in 2019 because of, well, obvious reasons, I only needed this. This is all I needed. I didn't need the whole thing. I actually just needed a couple of pages. I just made this. As you can see here, this was the beginning of the whole adventure. It was one game session and it was a one-shot, and well, I needed everything right here. This was the beginning of the adventure. It started out in a town, and here you can see I had the town map right here. I had the different factions right here, the different people and what they were. Here was the boss that you were working on. This was the office and so on. This was later in the adventure when you were walking around, and of course this here was the late part when they were entering a temple. This was the second half of the adventure, and these were all the different things that they were supposed to encounter. I have different notes on wherever it's going to happen. I have different stats of people. I have right here, this was the MacGuffin that they were supposed to look for, and so yeah, I could just describe this picture right here and just describe what is there to do in this adventure. Now, of course, I had the computer with me because I wanted to have all the lengthy text like introductions or longer descriptions and so on, or the very important parts that needed to be said by NPCs and so on, that I put it on my notes so I'd always had it in front of me whenever I was doing this. And the thing is that I was much less tired when I played this game session than the ones in 2014, and the reason was because I didn't have to work as a search engine. Everything was laid out in front of me. I had everything in here so I could just look up and see whatever is supposed to happen in the future, and I could more focus on the interaction with the players and running the game smoothly, rather than trying to look up all the different things, all the different stats, all the different maps, all the different people, and the connections between all of the different things that were happening at the same time. And this is something that I want to include in my adventure module. Now, one of the reasons why this here setup worked for me is because all of the preparation is done in advance. This is only me running the game. And that is something that I think is lacking many adventure modules, is that it's combining trying to run the game and trying to explain the whole story simultaneously. So you have to move through the whole body of content and separate what is useful when you're running the game and what is useful when you're preparing for the game. And so I think that I want to separate these two sections when I now make my adventure module in the vertical slice edition that I'm working on. Now, in this part here, the preparation part is missing. This is only running the game. These are the important things that I need to know and have at hand whenever I'm running the game. But that is also because I already know the purpose. I already know the setting. Why is this guy here? What's his purpose? What does he want? What's his motivations? Why is this town here? What are these families? What is this monster right here? What does it do? And so on. That's the thing. All of this information I've already prepared, but for a GM that picks up a completely new adventure module, that information is not there. So I want to separate my adventure module into two different sections. One, which is just the preparation section, which explains why are the different encounters there, what are their purposes, what's the intended gameplay, and so on. And so that the GM understands the underlying mechanics and the story that is supposed to happen, and that's what they're preparing. While when they're running the game, they only need the stats and the maps and all the different things that are just important and interesting at that point of time. So let's go back to episode 5 to look at this as an example. This is the entrance, this is the gatehouse, this is the first encounter that the players will meet whenever they're starting the game. And so this here has two purposes. One is to just be an obstacle. It's there so that the players can climb, or they can look at stuff, they can try to open the portcullis, they can be introduced to attributes and stats and skills, supplies, do some rolls, the basic stuff, just understanding the ropes and understanding how the different mechanics work in a very safe and controlled way. Now again, that's the first purpose. Now if the GM has already had a session 0 where there's some role playing, some roles and so on, this purpose isn't that important. Or maybe if the players already know the game because they've played before, then that purpose is also still not very important, and so the GM can decide if they just want to skip it, make it easier, or if the players are completely new, they could elongate this section and they could make it, for instance, like a more series of rolls where you would have a climb check instead of just one. You could have a series of 3, or you would need to have to assist somebody in it, and so on. That by just explaining what the purpose is of this here front part, then the GM can decide how to handle that purpose for their own audience, their own players. And the same thing goes for purpose number 2. Purpose number 2 is the zombie, who is right here. He's on top of this here gatehouse. He is half burnt and half impaled, which again is a foreshadowing element for the adventure to come. They will encounter more zombies, and this is how you deal with them. So for instance, you can either attack them and impale them, which again makes them immobilized, or you can just burn them, which will kill them instantly. And this here is again a safe spot where the players can experiment, they can prod and see what happens if we chop off the arm, what happens if we burn it a little bit, what intensities do you need to burn them, and so on. Right? It's a very safe place for them to explore and understand the underlying mechanics of the zombies. Now, this is a very important foreshadowing element, because if they don't encounter this zombie, they have the opportunity to skip this and then enter the entrance right here, where there are 4 zombies that are going to attack them. The problem with these 4 zombies right here is that if they haven't encountered this here zombie that is here and understood that it is only weak to fire and impaling, that means that when they come here, these are driven RPG players, and they would just assume that this is a regular D&D zombie that is just a bag of hit points, and they will start to attack it with whatever weapons they have, and they will lose that fight. And well, that will be unfair because they haven't gotten the chance to actually understand the underlying mechanics of the game. So by telling the GM that this here is a foreshadowing element, and it's an important foreshadowing element that they need to encounter, the GM can decide what to do with that information when they run the game. Because when they're running the game, the players might try to open up the portcullis. Now again, it says in the rules that the portcullis doesn't open, but if the players come up with a brilliant plan that I, as a designer, haven't come up with, and then GM thinks, yes, this is a brilliant idea, let's roll with it, then he knows that this element that is on top right here, it won't come up. They won't encounter it. So what he can do then is say, yes, you can open up the portcullis and move that zombie encounter to the inside of the gatehouse. And with that, the players will still encounter this zombie. All the other stuff that is around here isn't very important. If this winch right here is used or not, it's not very important. The important part is that zombie and the purpose of that zombie. And this is why I think it's important to separate the purpose and intended play from actually running the game. If the GM is prepared by knowing what the purpose and the intended play is, they can easily break those rules if the players come up with different ideas or have a different plan in mind. And they can still have the information that is needed when running the game, which is just the stats, the maps, the different descriptions, and so on, and the connections between the two things. And this is why I want to separate these two into different sections, and I also want to try to make it so that the running the game section at least is only on one page spread, so that you can sit there with the book, you can sit there and look at 2 pages and run the game with only 2 pages open, and separately have in your back of your mind understanding the different purposes of all the different elements that are in the story. Now again, I'm not sure if this is a good idea or not, but it's an idea, and please give me some feedback on this idea here. I want to try to run it, try to play test it, see how GMs feel about this format right here, and I will try to fix it eventually. So what do you like about this format? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Please write down in the comments if you think this is a good or bad idea, and if you have any feedback of how to make it better. And so I think I'm done with the video, so please like, share and subscribe, and email this to your GM because they'll probably like it. See ya.